everyone, I am Sana and welcome to today's lecture which is about addictive behaviors. The objectives of today's lecture are: first is meaning of addictive behaviors, second characteristics of addictive behaviors, third is type of addiction, fourth is types of addictive behaviors, and fifth is conceptual model of addictive behaviors. Let us begin with the meaning of addictive behaviors. An addictive behavior is any activity, substance, object or behavior that has taken over a person's life to the exclusion of all other pursuits, or that has started to physically, mentally or socially harm the person or others. Anything can cause someone to develop an addiction, dependence or compulsive obsession. According to some experts, there are similarities between psychological dependency on behaviors like compulsive gambling, sex, employment, running, shopping, or eating disorders, and physical addiction to certain drugs like alcohol and heroin. It is believed that these behaviors cause the brain to release beta endorphins, which makes the user feel high. According to some experts, if a person keeps doing the activity to maintain this sense of well-being and euphoria, he or she may fall into an addictive loop. By doing this, he or she physically becomes dependent on his or her own brain chemicals, which encourages continued engagement in the behavior, even though it may have detrimental effects on one's health or on others. Others consider these to be simply bad habits. A psychological component is present in the majority of physical addictions to drugs like alcohol, heroin, or barbiturates. For instance, even after abstaining from alcohol for years, an alcoholic may still feel the urge to drink. As a result, some researchers believe that both physical and psychological dependencies on a range of substances, activities, and behaviors need to be seen as both addictive processes and addictive behaviors. They propose that these behaviors shouldn't be classified as distinct illnesses, subtypes, or disorders because they all have a number of characteristics that make them more similar than dissimilar from one another. Let us now talk about the common characteristics among addictive behaviors. There are many common characteristics among the various addictive behaviors. First, the person develops an obsession with it and thinks about the object, activity, or substance non-stop. Second, despite the harm it is creating, like physical issues, subpar work or academic performance, issues with friends, family, or co-workers, they'll seek it out or indulge in the behavior. Third, the individual will repeatedly engage in the behavior even when he or she does not want to and will find it difficult to stop. Fourth, when an activity is stopped, withdrawal symptoms frequently appear. These include impatience, cravings, agitation, and depression. Fifth, the activity seems to be beyond of the person's control in terms of when, how long, or how much he or she will repeat it. For example, they consume the entire book of cookies, purchase 8 pairs of shoes when they just required a belt, drink 6 beers when they only desired one. Sixth, despite others being able to observe the consequences, he or she frequently downplays issues brought on by the action. Seventh, after the expressed concern by family or close friends, the person hides the behavior. For example, hides food beneath the mattresses, hides alcohol bottles in closets, hides credit card payments from the spouses, etc. Eighth, a lot of people who engage in addictive behaviors describe having a blackout during the period. For example, they can't recall how much they spent or what they bought, how much they lost gambling, how many kilometers they ran on a sore foot, or what they did at party while drinking. Ninth, people who engage in addictive behaviors frequently experience depression. To find out what is happening, it is crucial to schedule a consultation with a doctor. And finally, the 10th, people who engage in addictive activities frequently have low self-esteem, worry if they cannot control their environment, and originate from families that engage in either psychological or physical abuse. Let us now talk about types of addictions. First is substance addiction. As the name suggests, substance addiction is the abusive use of any substance, for example, illegal substances, over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, prescription medicines, food, coffee, and even sugar, regardless of any detrimental effects or unfavorable outcomes they may occur. Second is behavioral addiction, when a person engages in self-destructive, compulsive, recurrent behaviors such as gambling, using the internet, falling in love or being in love, having sex, playing video or internet games, working, shopping, or working out to an extreme degree. It can have a negative impact on their personal and social lives as well as their mental and physical health. This is known as behavioral addiction or process addiction. According to experts, addiction can take many different forms and can affect anything that stimulates the mind and body. Addiction is a term used to describe a behavior that transforms into an obligation. Addiction is traditionally understood to be a combination of physical dependency and withdrawal symptoms. But some obsessive actions can develop into harmful habits that have psychological dependence rather than acute physical withdrawal symptoms, much like some substance addictions. In order to satisfy a self-imposed craving and self-reward syndrome that results in a physiological stimulation or high, persons who are susceptible to maladaptive and recurrent patterns of use of substances or activities that ultimately have a detrimental impact on the self and or others. It would be helpful to consider addictions in terms of problems with lifestyles as well as problems with the individual, because research from the past 20 years suggests that a variety of substances and behavioral addictions may serve similar functions. Unfortunately, behavioral addictions are very frequent among people who struggle with addiction, and without therapy and intervention, persons with behavioral addictions are unable to cease engaging in their compulsive, destructive behaviors owing to a lack of awareness and knowledge. Let us briefly reflect upon passion versus addiction. Most of the routine actions and behaviors we take each day are a reflection of our passions, ambitions, and aspirations for development. We seek highly desirable goals out of excitement and pleasure for self-fulfillment and satisfaction, and this is what we mean when we say that we are passionate about them. When it comes to passionate habits, moderation and balance are essential. Addiction-related behaviors are those that a person compulsively engages in despite feeling guilty about it and the detrimental effects they have on their mental, social, and financial well-being. This happens when they lose control, joy, fulfillment, and pleasure. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, edition 5th, states that the presence of signs of impaired control, social impairment, risky use, and pharmacological criteria is required for the diagnosis of a substance use disorder. Behavioral problems can also be diagnosed using the same standards. Number 1. The person struggles with mental health or physical health issues as a result of the behavior or is unable to stop. Number 2, the person has difficulties in significant relationships at home and, in some cases, at work due to the disruptive behavior. Number 3, the person experiences other negative consequences that are directly caused by continued, extreme, or chronic engagement in the behavior. Number 4, the person cannot stop engaging in these behaviors despite negative consequences. Coming to another objective of today's lecture, which is types of addictive behaviors. First, we will talk about gambling. Gambling problem is now included in the newly developed category of behavioral addictions in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, edition 5th. According to research, there are numerous ways in which disorders related to substances and gambling are similar. These parallels will aid in raising people's awareness and educating them in the pursuit of much needed medical care and rehabilitation. Gambling addiction, often referred to as problem gambling, compulsive gambling, or gambling disorder, is an addictive behavior centered around different forms of gambling that puts a person's life, career, or family in jeopardy. Gambling addicts frequently conceal their conduct. They might tell family members lies and conceal their gains or losses. They crave the euphoric thrill, physical or mental escape numbness that comes with gambling, or excitement. The following characteristics more specifically define gambling addiction. Increasing the number of times you place bets, betting more than originally expected, overspending on bets and chasing losses by placing bets that are too expensive to pay off. When unable to gamble or after suffering a loss, feeling irritated or hostile, being captivated by gambling, and legal, financial, interpersonal, academic or career and legal issues can all affect problem gamblers. Many people who battle gambling addiction may also think about or perhaps try suicide. Let us talk about coffee or caffeine. The DSM-5 includes both caffeine intoxication and caffeine withdrawal. However, caffeine use disorder is listed within the DSM-5 category of conditions that need more study. Even while there is proof that this is a disorder, experts say it is still unclear whether or not it is clinically relevant disorder. Some caffeine withdrawal symptoms are headache, sleepiness, irritability, lethargy, constipation, muscle stiffness, pain and cramping, not paying attention, insomnia, nausea and vomiting, anxiety, dizziness, and heart rhythm abnormalities. Third type is eating. Many people engage in dysfunctional eating behaviors that have contributed to the growth of eating disorders because culture and the media portray conflicting messages about unachievable and unrealistic conceptions of ideal body shapes. Anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa, compulsive eating, and binge eating disorder are a few examples of these disorders. In the United States, 2% of adults suffer from binge eating disorder. Food addiction and binge eating disorder are distinct despite the fact they are comparable in many respects. Both may lead to obesity, but those who battle food addiction can also be of normal weight. People with food addiction are unable to control their eating behaviors despite the fact that eating is a requirement and that people occasionally overeat out of boredom or for delight and pleasure. They have a strong need for things that are fatty, sweet, or salty. They may grow tolerant to the foods they consume, needing more even when they are not hungry, which can result in health difficulties like obesity and mental health problems. A defining characteristic of food addiction is a loss of control or hyper-control, which is anorexia nervosa and bulimia nervosa over the food consumption. Food addiction symptoms include eating certain items in greater quantities than intended, eating despite not being hungry, eating till you start to feel sick, be concerned about cutting back on or refraining from eating particular meals. When particular meals are unavailable, make every effort to find them. Eating frequently rather than working, spending time with family, or engaging in leisure activities. You avoid professional or social situations where certain foods are available because of fear of overeating. You struggle to perform well at work or school as a result of your eating habits. Eating can lead to issues like depression, anxiety, guilt, or self-loathing. To lessen unpleasant feelings or boost pleasure, you need to eat ever-increasing amounts of food. Eating the same amount of food no longer increases pleasure or lessens unpleasant feelings the way it used to. Next type of addictive behavior is gaming. The DSM-5 includes internet gaming disorder under the heading of disorders requiring more study. This is in line with the scientific literature that demonstrates how persistent and recurrent use of online gaming can cause clinically substantial impairment or distress. The following are warning signs of video game addiction according to the Center for Online Addiction. Playing for longer and longer periods of time, considering gaming while engaging in other activities, playing video games as a diversion from stress, anxiety, or depression, lying to family and friends to conceal gaming, irritated when attempting to limit gaming, Video game addiction seems relatively safe in comparison to drug addiction and other process addictions. However, excessive video game playing can interfere with a person's capacity to form meaningful connections with people, maintain healthy relationships, fulfill obligations at work, and make decisions that are beneficial to their physical and mental health. For example, eating regularly or unhealthy, going to the doctor, etc. Without treatment, some people risk becoming totally cut off from society, losing their capacity to operate, interact with loved ones, and accomplish anything outside of the virtual world. Let us talk about another type, which is internet or social media. The majority of the time that internet and social media addicts spend online is spent on their computers or phones. Due to their inability to physically connect with their friends, family, and other loved ones, they run the danger of developing relationship issues. Because of their excessive internet use, they can lose their employment and do poorly in school. Users who complain about discomfort and agitation when they can't connect on social media may experience anxiety as a result of their frequent use, which could be a sign of withdrawal symptoms. The unwillingness to unplug despite the side effects from using social media or the internet is an indicator of addiction. Coming to another type, which is sex. Multiple sexual addiction symptoms include compulsive sex, sex with prostitutes, anonymous sex with many partners, adultery while in a committed relationship, and persistent voyeurism and exhibitionism. According to experts, 8% of men and 3% of women suffer from sexual addiction. Sexual addicts might utilize their addiction to sex to escape from reality, cope with anxiety, or indulge in compulsions that could be indicative of borderline personality disorder. People with borderline personality disorders are more likely to greater sexual preoccupation, be exposed to sex at a younger age, and frequently engaged in casual, promiscuous sex with numerous partners and engage in homosexual experiences. Further indicators of sexual addiction include a person's propensity for high-risk sexual practices, likelihood of developing more sexual transmitted diseases, and likelihood of being the victim of rape. Their actions are a result of victimization and impulsivity. Let us now talk about shopping. Despite the common misconception that compulsive shopping is an issue only experienced by women, 1 to 6% of the population experiences this problem. According to CNN reports, 5.5% of males and 6% of women experience this issue. According to studies, up to 17 million Americans struggle to resist their impulse to buy, even when it puts their jobs, marriages, families, and money at risk. The excitement people experience about getting their desired goods is what drives them to shop. When the enjoyable feelings from shopping turn into guilt and depression, they compulsively want to buy more to make up for those feelings, which is similar to dependence. Additionally, shopping addicts could have the want to buy to fill a gap in their lives, but the feeling is temporarily lasting. Another addictive behavior is work. Workaholism, also referred to as work addiction, is a rare diagnosable mental health disorder. Work addiction is characterized by a compulsive unwillingness to stop working in order to succeed or by working excessively in order to get through a mental, physical, or emotional crisis. Perfectionists are more likely to experience this issue. Despite having physical or mental health problems, these workaholics could continue to work for long hours. Symptoms of work addiction include working long hours in the office when it is not necessary, missing sleep to complete activities or work on projects, being obsessed on professional success, extreme anxiety about failing at job, being uneasy about one's performance at work, work-related breakdown of personal connections, having a defensive mindset when it comes to other people's work, putting work ahead of relationships, striving to manage guilt or depression-related feelings, and attempting to avoid calamities like death, divorce, or financial difficulty. Let us now talk about pornography. A compulsive want to watch porn is referred to as pornography addiction, regardless of the consequences. The signs and symptoms of compulsive porn use are frequently oddly similar to those of behavioral addictions, even though many medical and psychiatric professionals do not believe it to be a legitimate addiction. The negative effects of the conduct are what set a porn addiction apart from a great interest in porn. When you have a porn addiction, you view porn for long periods of time instead of connecting with others or finishing crucial activities. Even whether it affects your well-being, relationships, or work, the behavior continues. According to the American Psychological Association, there is disagreement among experts over the effects of pornography. Supporters contend that it can enhance sexual experiences and offer a secure outlet for urges. The argument against it is that it ruins your relationships and creates sexual aggression and produces unhealthy or negative habits. The last type of addictive behavior that we are going to discuss now is exercise. Because exercise addiction is maladaptive, it aggravates issues rather than making them better. Exercise addiction poses a harm to health by causing injuries, physical damage from insufficient rest, and in some cases, especially when it coexists with an eating disorder, malnutrition, and other issues. Because it is persistent, an exercise addict exercises excessively and for an extended period of time without allowing the body to rest. We all occasionally push ourselves too far and need to take a break. But regardless of exhaustion or illness, persons with exercise addiction exercise for hours every day. If they are unable to do so, which is their primary method of stress management, they feel anxiety, frustration, or emotional pain. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, edition 5th, which is the gold standards for the diagnosis of mental disorders, currently categorizes exercise addiction as behavioral addiction. Along with self-induced vomiting and the abuse of laxatives, it is also regarded as a compensatory behavior used to avoid weight gain in people with the eating disorder bulimia nervosa. In a recent study published in the journal Eating and Weight Disorders, studies on anorexia, bulimia, and obesity found that rates of exercise addiction are nearly 4 times greater in adults displaying signs of an eating disorder. Let us now talk about the last objective, which is conceptual models of addictive behaviors. There are many different ways to understand the causes of addiction and how to change these behaviors. Different conceptual approaches to understanding addictive behavior are clarified by the helping and coping model presented by Brickman. Brickman and his associates asked the following 2 questions during their analysis. A. How much of the problem's early emergence is attributed to the individual? B. To what extent is the individual held accountable for altering their actions or finding a solution to these problems? 4 general models were developed from the responses to these 2 attributional questions. The moral model, which is a person is held accountable for both acquiring and resolving the issue. The medical or disease model, which is a person is not held accountable for either the cause of the issue nor the solution. The enlightenment model, which is person is accountable for the development of the addiction but is unable to change without the assistance of a higher power. And the compensatory model, which is change, is seen as a personal duty even when the person is not held accountable for the etiology. The moral model was prominent during Prohibition, but it receives little support in the current literature on addictions. According to the moral model, addiction is seen as a manifestation of character weakness. Those who struggle with addiction are pushed to develop stronger willpower in order to overcome their vices. According to the Enlightenment model, which gets its name from emphasizing enlightening people about the true nature of their addiction, the only way to experience transformation is to give a personal control and submit to a higher power or collective entity. Brickman includes the many anonymous self-help organizations in this group, such as Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. The self-help literature has recently been reviewed by Gartner and Reisman. the disease model of addiction was created as an alternative to the moral and enlightenment models' victim-blaming outlook. The disease model, which was initially used to describe alcoholism, has since been expanded to encompass other types of addiction. The disease model constitutes the predominant methodology used in the American treatment programs. Recent proponents of the disease model tend to focus on physical dependence, genetic predisposition, and the idea that disease is progressive. Although there are benefits to utilizing the disease model in therapeutic settings, such as allowing people to seek help without being blamed for their addicted behavior, there are also drawbacks to employing this model as a scientific theory of addiction. Initially, disease models of addiction fail to account for similarities among addictions, even addictions that may not include substance use due to beliefs about biological genetic exclusivity, for example, compulsive gambling or sexual behaviors. Additionally, disease model of etiology imply that people are not responsible for altering their behavior. As a result, these models fall short of explaining how and why many people appear to overcome their addictions without seeking treatment or professional assistance, or why they appear to benefit from a variety of different treatment approaches. The compensating model is the last model Brigman presents. Since the problem's etiology involves biological and learning factors outside of an individual's control, individuals are not held accountable for the problem's initial development in this case, but they are assumed to be capable of compensating for the addiction by participating actively and responsibly in the change process. The compensatory model is based on the notion that addiction is best understood as a learned, adaptive, or functional behavior in the context of personal and environmental factors, that is, that drug use or other addictive behavior is motivated by the individual's attempt to adapt to stress, including stress associated with the consequences of drug use, rather than by simple exposure to addictive substances. Some theorists have argued that because addiction has so many contributing factors, it is best characterized as a biopsychosocial issue. Such a conception of addiction makes an effort to look for patterns among addictive behaviors. In the setting of environmental circumstances, biological processes may, in brief, raise the likelihood of establishing a dependency. Addiction processes appear to share many learning variables, including classical and operant conditioning, observational and social learning, and higher order cognitive processes, including beliefs, expectancies, and attributions. Examples include the development of conditioned responses to drug stimuli and the consequences of conditioned tolerance. This brings us to the end of today's lecture. Thanks for watching.